Hey folks, Pete back with you. Kind of been wanting to do this video for a while. Been busy and maybe procrastinated a little bit too, but I wanted to make a video that when folks are looking to buy a tractor, or especially a Kioti DK series, that I thought I'd share some of my experiences with some of the add-ons that I put on this tractor, some of which I really like and some of which are useless. You can save yourself a little money, but some of them are definitely needed and must-haves. So I thought I would go through some of this stuff with you, maybe do a little bit of you know, some of the things I really like about this tractor, and I could demonstrate a few things that I'm not crazy about. But you know, one thing we have to remember is, you know, I think I spent somewhere around $13,000 less on this tractor than if I'd have bought the, you know, pretty equivalent Kubota. So, you know, you kind of have to keep that into mind. And when I made my decision on purchasing this, I really made the decision based on value. And I felt like I was getting the most tractor for my money with this, and it's proven to be quite a workhorse too. So let's go through a few things here. I've got the tractor outside. It's wicked cold out today, but it's just been that way all season, so there's not much we could do. I didn't want to wait until spring to make this video when we're back in the dirt work and super busy. So I'm using my wireless mic for the first time, so it'll be interesting to see if this wind that's picking up here is getting transferred to the video or not. But so we'll start with the 3-point hitch, because I mean, that's probably one of the most important factors, right? When you're buying a tractor, you're going to be using this all the time. So I upgraded the rear 3-point hitch arms to these telescoping arms, and also these sway bar links. They're so easy to adjust. You pop the pin, you know, you set it where you want it, and then you just drop the pins in. The other ones have turnbuckles on them, which, you know, as soon as those get rusty and stuff, that's just a nightmare. And then when you come up to an implement to slide the arm over the pin, you need to move the arm out in order to get it over the pin and then in. So having these so easily, you know, removed and letting them swing is just, it's key. You spend the money, you'll never ever regret spending the money on these arms. So by pushing this down, I'm sure everybody knows these, you know, you can slide these in and out several inches, and it just makes putting your implements on a lot easier. And honestly, I have a quick hitch that I purchased, but I don't use it. You know, with these arms and the hydraulic top cylinder, which we'll get to next, it's so easy to swap them over. And to be honest with you, having that link in between, the quick hitch in between your tractor and the implement, sets it back a little bit further. And it's just not a hard mount. It's not a firm mount. These pins have very little slop in them. When you put that hitch on, your implements tend to wobble back and forth, and there's a little bit of play. When you're doing finish work, you don't want that, or at least I don't. You know, do they make swapping between attachments easier? Yeah, they do. If you do that a lot, maybe it's worth it. I found that for the times that I need to swap them over, it's not really worth it to me. But I did buy the drawbar, but I don't have it in there. You know, for a while I was using it to tie the tractor down, but I've since found a better method on tying the tractor down to the trailer. This is my homemade counterweight, and I bought this cheap 3-point hitch arm off from Amazon for like 25 bucks or something like that. And I welded some angle iron on here, drilled this top hole. I welded some angle iron down below and put these pins through it. I built a plywood box, and I had 4 pieces of threaded rod here. Hey, Maisie. 4 pieces of threaded rod in there to hold the mold together, the plywood mold, and there was 2x4s on the outside of it holding it together. And then I bought an extension 2-inch receiver, and I welded that to the receiver that came with the 3-point hitch arm that I purchased, and I just drilled a new hole in the side of it, so that, you know, for hooking trailers up and stuff. When I had this all built and these threaded rods through it, I used those threaded rods to there's my my list of items I want to cover. This rebar here. This thing is loaded with rebar. I've got it wire tied to those threaded rods, and I left a good loop up here because it makes it easy to pick up with a fork, so I can just slide a fork through there. This weighs about 800 pounds, pretty close to it. I do have a scale, a load cell actually, that I picked this up with, and I think the max was 670 pounds or something. So when I picked it up, it immediately went into error. So by calculating the volume in this thing, I think I figured it out to be close to 800 pounds. So the next upgrade I would do is this hydraulic top link. You'll want to get a second set of rear remotes. So here you see I have 2, because this one now is always connected to this cylinder. It's important to note that some of these hydraulic top link cylinders don't have this check valve system in it. And the first one that was on here didn't. And what happened is I could move this up and down, but as soon as I put it to a position when I was using the flail mower, and as I was going over humps and bumps and stuff, this was floating back and forth. It didn't stay under pressure. And you know, there are some times that's good, like, you know, a lot of the implements that you want, the Harley rake and the mower that you want to follow the contour, they'll have a slot in there instead of a pinhole to take care of that. But it was horrible on the box scraper. It just didn't work. You need to be able to level that box scraper front to rear using this top link. So I swapped it out for one that has this check valve system in it, so that whatever length you set that to, it stays and it will not move. I've had great luck with it, and for doing finish work, it's super nice. That is a must-have in my opinion. And of course, like I said, you need that second set of rear remotes. So like with the Harley rake, I have a hydraulic angle on it, and that's what I use on that. And on my flail mower, it has a hydraulic slide offset about 2 feet either side, and that's what I use the other remote for there. Let's see, another option that I put on this was this third function valve kit. So I had them put these on, and ooh, it's cold. These rubber caps don't want to come off. And I'll show you here. I ended up, there's ice on that. I ended up putting flat face couplers on here. Standard, it comes with your normal hydraulic couplings that are on all ag equipment like this. But I wanted to be able to rent, you know, implements from the yard, skid steer implements from the rental shops. And by putting flat face couplers on here, that enabled me to do that. And so my partner in the business, he has the skid steer and I have the tractor. And this way I use his grapple. We don't have to mess around with couplings and stuff. I just hook the grapple on and go. This is a really nice feature. Most people know this, but on the loader lever here, these 2 buttons right here are for, you know, flow in one direction and the other direction. That is a nice feature. It really extends the capabilities of the tractor when you put those on it. I do a lot of grapple work with this. As you can see, I've got some tape over this grill here and here from sticks that poked through the grapple just put some little dings in here, but I covered these up because when I do mowing in the fall, the seeds and weeds and stuff like that all really cake up on the screens here, and I didn't want any to get through, or any more than it already does get through to the radiator, so I covered those up. And it didn't affect the cooling at all. This thing's got plenty of cooling capability. Those radiators sometimes, or these screens in the front will be completely plugged, and it still runs at normal temperature. The only time it really starts to rise is when the radiators inside start to get, you know, some seeds and some stuff building up in them to reduce the airflow. So let's see, what were the other items I wanted to, not necessarily accessories that I added, but something that I changed is this rear triangle used to be mounted up here on an arm that went up above the cab. And with that up there, I couldn't get in my 9-foot doors, 9x8s, I should say. So what I did is this wiper fluid jug here has a steel box around it that this mounts in, and there were some threaded holes, some threaded holes in there. I think they were M6s, and so I took the farmer's triangle off from the top, and I drilled some holes in the triangle so they lined up with the holes in this washer fluid box, and just mounted it here. The window clears no problem. And the only thing you can see here is if you have this out like that and you raise the 3-point hitch arm, these hoses hit this, and that's how that kind of got dented up. But so long as you keep that swung out of the way, you got plenty of clearance. That's a nice place to keep that for sure. The other thing I changed out, because the toolbox that came on this was worthless. It was a little deeper than this, but it was really short, about this short. I couldn't even put a long screwdriver in it. So I purchased this one off Amazon for next to nothing. I think it was 20 bucks, if that. And I just drilled some holes in the bottom of it. You can see there, I drilled some holes in the bottom of it to line up to the mounting holes of this bracket down here so that it's firm. And now I can get some longer wrenches and stuff in there, and I don't know, I like it better. You can't you can't stack as much in it because it's not as deep. But when you have a toolbox that's deep like that, you're always digging to the bottom for the small things, like the pins and latch pins and stuff like that. So having it thinner and longer, to me, just made more sense. I like it. It works good. One thing I did modify, though, on this is this small, thin piece of sheet metal where it's angled over here is what mounts the box to the frame of the tractor. And this had a tremendous amount of flop when I was in the tractor driving. The toolbox would shake around on this side back and forth because it really was only supported on the one side, and it was relying on this thin sheet metal to keep it stiff. So what I did is, you see this angled piece here? Hopefully you can see this. I just welded a little 1-inch piece of steel from back here where it's rigid out to the end where it was flat, where it was, you know, able to move around, and it really firmed this up so it doesn't bounce around and you're not listening to the tools bouncing around all the time. I did purchase some chains for this. They're not on it yet now, but boy, they are really aggressive. I'm a little nervous about going in the garage floor with them on. But I'll be putting those on actually soon, and unless I have the dealer do it, because actually the tractor has to go back because I have a small issue that we can talk about a little bit later. They're going to take a look at that, and while it's there, I'm going to have them maybe just throw the chains on for me. It won't take them long to do it. And the heater block, I think that's over here. It's by the starter over here somewhere. Yeah, right here. So this little knockout right here, that'll come out. Let's see, can we see that? Yeah, right there. Right there. That little plug, frost plug, will come out, and the heater block will mount in there. I may just have them do that while it's up there too, because you have to drain the whole system, and they have strainers and filters and stuff so they can reuse the coolant. So another thing I opted for were these R14 tires. I've never had R14 tires before this tractor, but I've got to say I really like them. I think they're a great combination between Ags and the R4 tires. They have this nice tight lug of tread going down the middle, so that when you're on, you know, hard ground and pavement, you don't have that thump like you do with the Ag tires. The R4s have a really wide tread pattern here, and they're great for wear, long-term wear, but they're absolutely horrible in the snow. These tires have been working great. Those are filled. I had them put the Schrader valve all the way to the top, and I asked them to fill with fluid right to the bottom of that. So these tires are filled to right about here with ballast. And I don't know exactly the weight increase, but it's dramatic. And honestly, when we get to some of the things I really like about the tractor, we'll talk about ballast and counterweight a little bit more. But we can go inside the cab, and I'll point out a few things that I added on. Some of which are good, some of which are bad. So I paid for the armrests that bolt onto the back, and they come out on each side of the seat like this. But I ended up having to take them off because these are the controls for running my rear remotes, and here's my 3-point hitch lift, and they were completely in the way. So it made using any of these arms almost impossible to use. There's a couple neat features. So this little button here on the side has a little rabbit on it. So what you can do is when you're doing loader work, as you're going into a pile, and you know, I usually don't run this thing at max RPM. I usually run around 1500 RPM when I'm just doing work. It's got plenty of power at that RPM. So what I do is, if you are getting into a pile and you know it's going to be tough digging, if you hit this button, it brings the RPM up on the motor, so it gives you more drive power going into the pile and lift power too. Not as much on the lift as it is the drive power, but it's a nice feature. It works well. This arm down here is the linked pedal. Some people are really wild about that. You know, that's just, the more you push your hydraulic pedal, the more RPM goes up. I like to just keep my RPM constant at that 1500 level or so. You know, maybe if you had a tractor with less power, you'd want that, but this thing works great. I rarely use that there. Here's your throttle. This is your cruise control, which is great. I mow some 15+ acre fields, and rather than having to hold my foot on that pedal for 7 hours straight, I just, you know, I put it right to the speed I want, and that holds it. It's great. There's also a cruise control for PTO. I generally don't use that because it takes quite a bit to bog the engine down on this thing. So I haven't really played around with that, but basically you can use that like a cruise control in your car. But what it does is it senses if the RPMs drop, it'll slow down a little bit so that your implement in the back. Hey, Hazy, are you cold out there, even with your jacket? She got a haircut yesterday, and boy, they shaved her awful short. Poor thing's gonna freeze. But anyway, so this here, it'll help you maintain your PTO speed as the tractor gets loaded down. It does have split brakes. There's just this little lever here you flip, and that's really handy if you need to make some tight turns and so on. You can use the left or the right brake to help you. What I use it for most of the time is when I'm pushing snow with the snow pusher I have on here. You know, once it gets filled up, it puts quite a bit of force pushing back at the tractor, which will lighten the front end a little bit, and it really takes away from your capability of steering. So when you have a nice load like that and you're pushing a load of snow, you can steer the tractor with these independent pedals left and right. You can steer the tractor using your brakes instead of turning your front wheels. That's a nice feature. Most tractors have them, but not all. This is a 3-speed hydrostatic, so low is forward, medium straight back, and then high is towards me and back. I don't know what the top speed of this tractor is. It's not something that I'm terribly concerned about. It looks like it even says down there. Miles per hour. Looks like about 18 miles an hour or so. But it's plenty fast. You know, even if you don't have a load in the bucket or something, that's 18 miles an hour is plenty fast for a tractor this size. I opted to get the radio. The sound quality stinks. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Honestly, I don't even use it. If I want music, I just use my earbuds. And there's the air conditioning and heat controls. The heat and AC in this thing are fantastic. It has tons of vents all the way around. Okay, battery just went dead in the middle of that sentence. But so this has 4 vents right here in the front and then 2 on each side. Here's the fresh air and recirc. I am really happy with how well this cab stays warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Maisie, you want to come in? You want to come in? Hup. Come here. Hup. Come on up. You can come in. Maisie, come on. Oh, you're shivering. Come on up, honey. Come on up here. No? You want to go inside? All right, I'll put you back. Poor Maisie. She's still only a little over a year old, and we struggle with her at the groomers. And yeah, so we had her at the groomer last week, and I stayed there with them for 2.5 hours. We tried to get her groomed, and she just would not let us do it. So we got 3/4 of the way done, and she'd had enough. So I had to take her to the vet yesterday, and they had to put her to sleep and use the trimmers and stuff on her while she was sleeping to finish her up, which obviously that was pretty expensive. We're hoping we can break her of that, but that's what had to be done. And they don't use scissors. It's like if you bring her in here, we clip her. So her hair is extremely short, and poor thing, she's cold when she comes out. So back to the tractor. This is kind of nice. I like this sun visor. That helps during those times where later in the afternoons and evenings when you're out mowing or whatever, you can block the sun. The wipers it's a good size. They're not the best quality, but they're good size, and they work pretty well. There's a washer in the front. There's also a wiper and a washer in the back, and as you can see, those lines, that's the rear defrost, so that window heats up, which works well. What else did I want to mention in here? Oh, yeah, so there was 2 things I wanted to mention. The reason I don't have the block heater in this tractor now is when we swapped my 2022 for this 2024 because of the hydraulic pump issue, they got a batch of heater blocks that came in that were failing. I don't know how they were failing, if they just stopped working or whatever, but they wouldn't put one in this, they said, until they got the updated one. And those are now available. I picked it up, and that needs to get put in at some point as well. Oh, something about these R14 tires. So I did a little research before I purchased my original 2022, the 6010. Because I wanted the R14 tires, but I noticed that the R14s, when they're on the tractor, they don't fill the fender wells up nearly as much as the ag tires or the R4s. And so I was a little bit concerned. I asked him if the mechanical ratio of the axles, if these tire circumferences were still in that same mechanical ratio as the other two types of tires, and they said it was. But I noticed pretty early on that that is not the case. So I live on a gravel road, I've got a gravel driveway, and I'll spin this around. But so I noticed pretty soon on that when I was in two-wheel drive and going up and down the gravel driveway and the road, that I didn't leave any tire tracks. Like there was nothing spinning or no tire tracks or anything left. But when I came up and down the hill in four-wheel drive, like if I had a heavy load on the front and I was going down the hill on the driveway, I didn't want to rely on just the back tires for slowing me down in case if I tried to stop quick, they might come off the ground a little bit. So I had it in four-wheel drive, and I noticed that I was leaving tire marks, like scuff marks in the driveway and on the road. So with no load in the bucket, I did the same experiment. I drove up and down the road a few times in two-wheel drive, and then I went next to that in four-wheel drive, and the front tires are actually spinning. They're a larger diameter. So the front tires, because there's a lot less contact patch with the surface and weight too than the rears, those front tires are constantly spinning. And you can see on these tires how they're wearing. I guess probably have to go back outside. I think I covered everything inside anyway. But you can see that these tires have worn quite a bit comparative to the rears. And you can see on if you look at pictures of these tractors with the R4s, the R4 tires come up pretty close to these fenders, and the same with the Ags. And these are the exact same tire size as the R4s. So that's why I questioned the mechanical ratio, and I know that that's an issue based on the wear I'm seeing. These tires, between being on this tractor and my 2022, they've got 600 hours on them, and those fronts have worn a fair amount. So I think when it's time to replace them, the rear tires, those are actually radials, and these are bias ply in the front. And Titan, Goodyear / Titan, they're coming out with more and more of the radials because they do offer a superior grip and really ride quality, because the belts and the tires on the radials, there's a separate set of belts that go around the circumference, and then there's another set of belts for the sidewalls, and they're separate. So the tire can kind of conform to things better and gives you a better ride. Where a bias ply tire like this, the belts in this tire start on this side and they wrap around the whole tire. And you can see how, like, the profile of the tire, because of that, it's more rounded. Where if you look at the profile on the radial, right, it's perfectly flat and straight. So you get better contact, you get better traction, and you get a better ride out of it. So I'm gonna have to experiment with, when these tires get too worn, either changing what I have there, or maybe I'll change the rear, because it seems like they've got more choices for the rear tire sizes. They actually make one that would be the right circumference to match what I have on the front, but the dealer couldn't get them. These are the only tires they put on these tractors for R14s. Couple other things I'll make note of on this tractor is these mirror brackets. They have like a detent in them, so they got a spring in them, but there's a detent, so they're pretty rugged. If you hit something real hard, they'll move. But on my Kubota, every time a small branch would hit it, it would fold them in, and it used to drive me nuts. This thing here, small branches, when I'm mowing around the edges of pastures and meadows, they hold up nice. They do. I mean, they fold away if something big hits them, And you can see that the top of the cab here has got a fair amount of scratching on it for, you know, I try to get close to things and do a good job mowing, but I really like how those mirrors hold up. That's a nice feature. I love being able to fill the fuel down here with my Kubota. I had to fill at the top. Now that I have a transfer tank with a motor and a pump, it's not as big of a deal, but it's still nice to be able to fill from down at that level. Okay, so some other general observations are these. So overall, I really like the cab design. Like I said, the heat and the AC is great. Probably the strongest point on these DK tractors, and it's a very well-known thing, is that the loader lift capacity on these things is incredible. I mentioned this in my last video. I almost think it's too much. If I didn't have those tires max filled with counterweight, and we're talking probably 300 or 400 pounds each tire, and this 800-pound block on the back, I could lift these back tires off the ground, no problem at all. And sometimes with the grapple, if I have a, you know, 6 or 7 good-sized logs in that grapple, and some of them being, you know, 16, 18 feet long, this thing has no problems lifting it. But when I'm going across the meadow to bring them to the log pile, hitting bumps and stuff, the rear end gets really light. You really got to use your head and be careful, because these loaders are very, very powerful. And like I said, maybe even a little bit too much, honestly, for the weight of the tractor. So you got to use your head there. Another thing I really like about this tractor, because I live in Vermont up here, and you can see around my property, there's not a flat spot anywhere. And the stance on this tractor is very wide and low center of gravity. So I feel very, very safe mowing on these hills and stuff with this tractor. The Kubota I had before, I put 2-inch wheel spacers on all 4 wheels because it just did not feel safe at all. I actually keep a level, a bubble level, you can see right in there inside the cab on that frame, so that I can kind of keep track of my side-to-side level. This thing here really is stable side hill. I know I've had several customers, and my buddy Zach that I work with in the summers, and also in the sugar woods with, he thinks I'm a maniac. He said, dude, you're gonna roll that thing. But I really feel safe in this, and I've put it in some pretty precarious situations, and you know, I had a few pucker moments too, but you know, it stayed on its all 4 tires, and I'm impressed with that. It does a really, really nice job with side-to-side stability. The dual pedals on the transmission, man, I really like them. I've always had Kubotas before this, so I got used to the pedals. But you know, if I ever were to buy another Kubota, I think I'd have to buy a gear drive, because that pedal, I don't really like the treadle pedal. I think the new electronic one's probably better than the older mechanicals, but I love these double pedals. They're good. I think that covers it for the extras. So I think you can probably tell by my voice, I'm really overall happy. The for sale signs are gone. I ended up deciding to keep this. It's really not going to cost me any more money in depreciation if I keep it another year. You know, you take the big hit right off the bat. Oh, there is one more thing I wanted to point out. Underside of this tractor has a lot of things down here that are quite fragile, that hang pretty low, and I'm always nervous, especially when I'm in the woods, that I'm gonna come over the top of something and rip some of this stuff apart. Now, the loader subframe here does protect things. You know, if it's a large object, I guess it'll protect things, but man, I almost think I'd consider maybe putting a few cross members across these to try and protect the underside a little bit more, because that could be very costly if you know, if a sharp rock was sticking up and you straddled it and off it went, right? It would probably destroy that. I'm going to start the tractor and I'm going to show you a few things that I don't like about this thing. So the motor in this thing is super quiet. I mentioned in the previous video that I thought the displacement was quite small for 60 horsepower. There's a parking brake. So it lacks a little bit of torque, I feel, but it's actually, I mean, it's cold now, so it's not super quiet, but this thing is really, I never wear hearing protection in this thing. The only time I do is when I'm doing those super big mowing jobs where I know I'm going to be in the tractor for 6 to 8 hours straight at high RPM. You know, the 540 RPM and this is 2600 RPM. So, and the mower makes noise. I use a flail mower. It's a Woodmax 78-inch hydraulic side slide mower. And if you want a flail mower that does a nice job, man, I'll tell you, this is my second flail mower I've got, and I love it. It's built really well, and it just does a much better job than the one that I had before. But so it's quite quiet in here, especially after it warms up. It gets quiet. The seat. This seat in here, it's a suspension seat, and it went through a period where it squeaked every time I moved a little bit, and I looked under there to see if I could spray some lubricant in there, and I didn't really see anywhere to do it without pulling the whole thing apart. But then it seemed to wear itself in, so it's nice and quiet again now. Okay, so one of the things I don't like is the hydraulics in this tractor, and I think that might be part of the reason why they're a lot less money. It has plenty of power, but they're very slow, and if you try to do see there, I got it in the sweet spot. So now it's lifting and uncurling at the same time, but see how slow that is, and it's a very small sweet spot on that handle. You have to be very acquainted, let's say, with this tractor to be able to do what I did there. I'm going to try and uncurl and lower, and you can see I can do it, but see how slow it is? My Kubotas were a lot more forgiving on the joystick to get. The sweet spot was a much larger sweet spot. You know, is that a big deal? It really is when you're using the pallet forks and you're trying to load or unload something out of a truck or something, or, you know, if you're trying to dump something or whatever. It really could be an issue, and you just got to be careful if you're trying to keep something level and lifting it, that it doesn't just take off. Because what happens is as I'm lifting and doing that, if I stop one from the other one can take off, and then it gets kind of jerky like that. So you have to be careful. You can get the sweet spot like this, but like I said, it takes time to figure that out. That's one thing that kind of bothers me. The other thing that bothers me, probably more than anything else, is this locking mechanism right here. So this mechanism right here is designed so when you lower your 3-point hitch, you want it at a certain level, you only want it to go down a certain amount. That's the hard stop. Well, watch this. I've got that tight, and I can push that thing right out of the way. So it's essentially useless. I picked up some things at the hardware store yesterday, and I have some fiber grip that I'm going to try and do a little bit of modifications with this so that I can be confident that when I set my mow height that it stays the same. If that works, I'll maybe make a video on what I do there, because I even take like alignment pliers and clamp it and turn it as hard as I can, and I can still move it out of the way. It's a little bit annoying, So what I end up doing a lot of times, since I have the hydraulic top link, is I'll set my height here and leave this alone, and then I'll raise and lower the mower using my top link. So I'll bring this up and down like that. Well, here, let me raise this up. You know, let's say that's my mower height. I'll use that to raise the back of the mower up and the bottom of the mower and so on. And then here's my the PTO engagement. That always works good. Some switches, those are all fine. Let me show you, I've got one more thing I wanted to highlight that I don't like. And my Kubotas were all much better at this than the Kioti. And that's the lifting of the 3-point arms back here. I love having this handle here. It's great, but it's only a single speed lift and lower. The Kubota, if you make a very small adjustment, the arms would lift at a very slow rate. Now watch when I try to do a small adjustment in the up direction, the whole tractor jumps. You see that? I like slowly. It's trying to move fast. So when I do a small little move like this, and I'm at almost idle right now, it's worse when you rev it up. And by adjusting the valve underneath the seat to slow and speed up the drop direction. Here, let me turn this down a little bit and see. But there you can see how it jumps around quite a bit. Okay, so now I've got that adjusted slow. So now when I lower this, it goes down nice and slow, but still, when I try to lift, it still jerks the whole tractor around. So that's something that's a little annoying. Basically though, how I've gotten around it is now if I need to make a small adjustment in the up direction, I'll just let it come up, and then I'll do my final adjustment in the down stroke. You see how nice and smooth it goes down, right? When you have that speed turn down, I can make my fine adjustments in the down direction. So, you know, once I realized that was what I needed to do, it's become less of an issue, but I just wanted to point it out. Let's see, this tractor came standard with this electric trailer plug back here. I've never used it, but it comes standard with that. I think that just about covers it. Oh, those lights on the cab, I don't want to say they're useless. You know, in the winter they do a pretty good job because with everything being white, they illuminate things enough, but they're relatively bright, but they're a very narrow beam. And I've seen a lot of people put LED replacements in those. I may do that at some time. We'll see. But overall, for the money, I still think this is a great value. You know, that hydraulic pump issue really left a bad taste in my mouth when I bought the 2022 DK6010SE. I bought that one new, and I struggled with that problem, and the dealer and the factory struggled trying to fix that for 2 years. And they just never did. So they ended up swapping tractors. I got this 2024, and God forbid, this had the same problem. Even though it's a very low percentage of these tractors that have that issue, I just happened to get one that had the same issue. And I worked with their national service guy. I mentioned this in a previous video, and we've got a fix for it, or at least something that contains the symptoms. And so it no longer does the jerking and popping and jumping around like it used to do. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's resolved. I'm sure they'll get to the root cause eventually, and they'll fix it. But I'm happy with it. It works fine now, and like I said, this overall package, I think, is really hard to beat from a cost perspective to performance. And yeah, so anybody that's looking to buy a tractor, I guess, you know, I would highly recommend these. I would make sure though, before I sign the paperwork, that you try the one that you're gonna buy, and you run the loader through its paces. Go out and find a big pile of dirt and load that bucket as much as you can and cycle it all the way up and all the way down a few times, and see if you feel any like jerking motions or anything that's not smooth. Because if it isn't smooth, then that tractor would have the same issue that mine does, and it just continually gets worse as time goes on. You know, now maybe they're putting those electric pumps in series with the suction side of the hydraulic pumps on all of them before they sell, but I kind of doubt that, because I think the percentage of these tractors that have the issue is like less than 2%, 1.5% of them or something like that. So, but that's something that I would check before I made the purchase, just to make sure that you don't end up with one that has that problem, and then you'll be looking at having to have these extra pumps and wiring and harnesses and stuff put on to fix it. But anyways, that's kind of my overall view of this tractor. I'm going to hang on to it for at least another year. I put a lot of hours on these tractors, and I spend a lot of time in them, and so I feel like I really gotten to know this tractor well. And yeah, I'll hang on to it for another year, and you know, maybe I'll give another update. You know, if I get any more information, or they do anything differently with this tractor to fix the problem with the pump, I'll be sure to update everybody. But until then, I guess I'll see you folks on the next one, and thanks for joining me today. I'm starting to get a little cold myself. The wind's actually blowing pretty hard. I think it's about 15 or 16 degrees right now. And it feels, with that wind, it's definitely a below zero wind chill. So I'm gonna put the tractor back in its spot, its resting spot. And we'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.